This is something that I picked up out of the tip, I think, probably about 10-15 years ago, maybe even longer, and it's sat in a garage rotting. I think it's maybe some old ruler that would have been used by a school teacher. I don't think an architect would have used it. It's got no markings on it. And I looked at it today and I suddenly realised I could sand it down. It looks like a nice piece of timber on the top, probably maybe a bit of oak. And this is going to be a little restoration project for today. That's got the basics of it done. 120 and 320. I've got that completely smooth. I found that using a very flat surface, so obviously this is the end grain, and then wrapping something around it produced a much better finish. So it's nice and smooth now. Feels really nice to touch. It's got a nice feel to it. You can hear that sound of smoothness. And now, the next component is this, which would be what the teacher would have put up against on the blackboard and put his chalk across. I'm guessing that's what it is because, as I say, it doesn't have any marks delineating, inches, centimetres or whatever. So I kind of remember stuff like this when I was a little kid at school, probably in the very late 60s or early 70s. I sort of remember things like this. So, along with giant wooden compasses, those of you can remember that. So I polished the car yesterday. That used like an electric buffing machine and different pastes. My thoughts are that if I wash this, it's quite possible that I could buff it. However, the mess that I made yesterday meant that I had to spend hours cleaning off all the little bits of residue, and so it's quite a messy job and there's no way I'm going to do it in the house. So I think what I'll probably do is maybe set a workbench up outside and give this a clean and then see if I can't polish this to at least get some of the scratches out of it. I'm not looking to make it perfect, but it would be nice if we could make it look certainly more serviceable. And then of course the final touch will be to put some kind of finish on the handle. And I'm thinking probably I want something hard wearing. I'll probably go with Danish oil because it'll look good and it'll dry relatively quickly. So yeah, okay, so on with this. I'll give this a clean first, you don't need to watch that. And then the next thing you'll see is me polishing. Change of plan. I've decided to do this by hand. So the 3M system that I've got has 3 different types of polish. You have a green, a yellow and a blue. The green is the most abrasive. Then the medium is for pretty much removing the scratches that you've created with the green. And then the blue is a much finer. And the idea being is that that's the one that you use to polish out the sort of the misty effect that you end up with the yellow. I've washed this, and that's what it looks like now. So it looks a lot better having just been washed, and you can see this end bit here, which never scraped against anything, looks quite see-through. As it gets through there, it becomes a bit more opaque, and then again we get to the end, and it becomes a bit more see-through. So the idea being is we're not trying to make it perfect. We really just want to tidy this up and remove some of these larger marks and really just give it a bit of a second life. So I believe this is time for time lapse. I'll start off, and to make life easier, you'll see me using, as I said, the green first, and then the yellow, and then the blue. And I've actually got cloths which match in colour, so when you see a green cloth being used, you'll know I'm using the roughest, and consequently the yellow the medium, and then the blue, the finest. And an easy way to remember this one is that I always think that, you know, when you look at the ground and you look outside, you see the grass and that's green, and then you get daisies that grow on top of that and they're yellow, and then when you look up you get the sky. So that's the beginning, the green, and then the blue is the end. So that's how I use it. Have a look and see how it comes out. I didn't bother with the machine in the end. I spent all day with that thing yesterday and I can't stand the sound of it. So it's not perfect, but my God, look at that. That's just by hand. And you might have seen me use this to put on the green, the yellow and the blue. But what I did is that I actually used the green on one side, flipped it over for the yellow, and then turned it inside, this section of it inside out, so I didn't contaminate. I think the thing to do is to replace these screws or clean them up. I think I'm going to get some little brass ones, and then we'll put this back together again, and then it'll be job complete. I'm back from the shop and I managed to get these screws, which are just a little bit longer. So in case you didn't know, whenever you're drilling and screwing with brass, it's inherently weak and it likes to snap around the shank. So these steel screws have kind of acted like pilot holes, but this is slightly longer. So the best thing that I can do is to take a small little 2mm drill and then just drill, you know, only a couple of mil deeper to give this an easy chance. I don't know if you can remember back to doing woodworking at school, but they always told you that whenever you were going to screw in a brass screw, that you would first you'd drill a pilot hole, then you would put a metal screw in, then you would remove the metal screw and you replace it with the wood screw, and they would use stuff called tallow, which I believe was a whale product. So clearly that stuff doesn't exist any longer. So in place of tallow, I'm just going to use machine wax. And so once I have just driven a tiny little pilot drill, I'll then put a little bit of machine wax on the end of this brass screw and then just be very cautious how I screw them in. If you end up snapping them at the shank, you're pretty much done. I mean, it's possible to drill it out, but bearing in mind that I'm drilling through Perspex and into a hardwood, it would be a nightmare. So I'm going to do this process very gently. I'll put it on time lapse so you can see what's going to happen. But before we do that, it would make sense, in my opinion, to put some kind of finish or stain on the timber. And I've decided that the best thing to do is to actually wax it. It's quicker, and it means I could just complete the project now rather than having to wait for it to dry. So I'm impetuous, and that's what's going to happen. So time lapse and staining and putting it back together again. This is the last screw, so just dip it into the wax, put a screw in, so machine waxed on the screws. The actual colour, I used this, whatever that is, and then I finished it off with that, which puts a real shine on it. One good thing about doing up old crap, basically, is you get a lovely sense of satisfaction out of it. And this entire project cost me 72p and about an hour of my time. And so now it deserves a place in the workshop. So where will we put it? Well, I found a place to put it, and I think it would live very nicely up along the side there. But considering this is made out of Perspex, I don't really want to put a screw in the wall and hang it on a screw. It would damage it. So I think what we'll do is we will drill a perfect size hole to put a tiny little piece of wooden dowel in, and we'll hang it off that.
It's the one.